Hello, it is June 4th. It is a beautiful day. Today I reset the anchors on 4 of my trellises, a total of 8 anchors for the backstays, and a tremendous amount of lessons learned I want to share with you, hopefully to make it easier if you're putting in new trellises or you're looking at your trellises going, how can I improve them? What works for me in my conditions may not work for you in your conditions, but it's please take a look. Now this is kind of a long, this is probably one of my longer videos. I'm sorry, there's a lot to cover. Pour cider and sit back and please be patient with me. I even have a script because I had to keep it straight. I'm going to try inserting pictures and stuff like that to help you out. So I reset the wires were sagging. I mean, pure and simple, I looked at them and I went, man, it looks sloppy. And they weren't doing their job. We've been getting a lot of wind lately. Probably a lot of the country, we've been getting a lot of wind lately. And the trees weren't being held stable. The trees were banging back and forth against the wires. Instead of the wires holding them steady, everything was flopping around, which is probably why the wires started pulling loose to begin with. A lot of heavy rain, too, which, even though I have good anchors, I think the tension, I left too much tension on the wires over the winter, and they started to pull. So I had to go back and redo them. I'm going to insert a video now of part of what I learned, which is how to set up your anchor. Okay, very quickly, I'm out in the orchard today mending trellis backstays. Don't do this. If you're using gripples, don't do this, okay? You're just going to mess yourself up. Do this. What you got is one length that goes down to your anchor. You have another section that is your loop on top. Put the gripple in the middle. That way, and also only pull on the top stay, because that's like easy to get to. And for heaven's sakes, if you're up here and it gets too short, you can always snip it off, make a new top stay, slip it through, and start over again. Do this, not the other. I'm replacing a bunch of them that have come loose. More later. Bye-bye. So the back hauls, pause for a moment. The back hauls need to have something giving tension to them. The wire that goes between the trellis posts isn't anchored to the trellis post. You're going to have staples, and the wire is going to move back and forth in there and be allowed to slide back and forth. It's going to get tied off on the ends, either to the end post or preferably to a back haul. The posts along the line give vertical support to the wire, but the tension on the wire is giving some lateral support to the wire and holding it up. So you need to keep the tension on there so that if there is weight on the wire, hopefully from a big crop, that wire is going to support it rather than just sag and flop around. So I have really heavy soils, and that made it very difficult for me to do anchoring. There's lots of different anchors. What kind of money? Sorry, what kind of money you got? There are the augers that I just could not have afforded them, and I went with these. These are from Ken Cove, and I'll insert a picture of them. The wire goes through here, and there's a drive hole, and I use a drive post, and the drive post I use is I have the right one, but I prefer using electrical ground rod, okay, and that's really available to people, so if you're ordering this from a distance, you can use electrical ground rod, and that will fit in that borehole beautifully, okay. You put your wire through there, and you drive this into the ground. I put these in 2 feet, all right, and now I'm going through my topsoil, I'm going through a brown clay, and I'm going into a gray clay, just shy of being shale. Once I get into the gray clay, I've got a good anchor. Now what happens is I pull the drive rod out, and you let them rest for a few days. Just let them rest, and what will happen is the wound where you drove the rod in will seal up, especially if you get some rain. When you start to apply tension to the wire on these, this will turn, and it's almost as if you tied a rope around a rock or a log. It gets much bigger, and it has a lot more tensile strength. These are rated for 1,100 pounds, which I think is terribly optimistic. But maybe if you drove them into the right soils, you would be able to do 1,100 pounds of tension on these. You also need to use stainless steel wire, important now, in the ground. What connects to this and what comes to the surface must be stainless steel. I tried it once. I was frugal, not to say cheap, and I tried using standard fencing wire, high galvanized, high tensile steel. It lasted 2 years and it just dissolved. It was gone. No kidding, you gotta use the stainless steel wire. But you don't need to use stainless steel all the way. If you bring it a foot or two above the surface and you cut it, you can use high tensile above the surface and connect the two with a gripple and use that to pull them together. You save a lot of money. Actually, you don't waste money. All right? The other thing is you probably will never have to repair what's below the ground, but you might have to repair what's above the ground. That's really easy just to cut and replace. I keep a lot of scrap, I call them drops, of fencing wire, and I hang it, picture, and I hang it up there, and I use that for repairing these. Now, one thing you need to know is cutting the stainless steel wire is difficult. Your normal high tensile steel cutters probably won't work. You'll hurt yourself. Use bolt cutters. Bolt cutters, no problem. Snap, snap. So have a pair of bolt cutters around. All right. You're going to use the gripples. Now, if you're not familiar with gripples, go to Ken Cove, look them up on the web. This isn't a gripple class. But what it is you're going to use an 11 gauge going through the stainless steel. You're going to use a 12.5 high tensile. But those two will fit through there, and there are ceramic reels in there that will grip the wire. You'll use the special tool. You borrow one, use it. They're not that uncommon out here. And you use that to pull the high tensile wire through when you have just enough of the stainless to set it in the gripple, and you're going to consume the high tensile wire to put tension on it. Okay, more pictures there. You want to get the wire onto the anchor, and it's kind of difficult, but I found that if you take the drive rod and you prop it in something, and I used a post hole on my utility vehicle, and I slide the anchor on top of that. Now I've got a nice working platform, almost like a jig, to be able to work and bend and get the crimps and the like onto here. And as always, slide your two crimps on, fold it, slide them up, and put two crimps on there, and you'll have a very solid, never have to see it again, connection to your anchor. Now, in the end, you're going to bring this wire, the stainless wire, up 2 feet above the surface. Okay, you don't have to go much further than that. So 2 feet above the surface. You're going to now go and make a loop of the high tensile wire. You're going to put that over the top, not the middle. I was using stainless, being frugal. I put it through the middle of my back post. Well, what that did as a mistake, it gave more mechanical advantage to the tension of the top stay to pull the anchors out. I mean, I had mechanical advantage. I don't want to do that. If I take the wire and I take that one and I put a high tensile one to the top stay, it doesn't have as much mechanical advantage to pull this down, but the tension on this has more mechanical advantage on the other horizontal wires going across. So it works better. All right, so that's it. So, and the other thing is, when I'm putting these on, and the first time I anchor one, remember you got two ends, you pull it back, you apply tension, you pull it back, life is good. Now I have springs on my lines. The springs are there for on a really windy day and it's bouncing. That impulse force isn't translated to the anchors. The wire absorbs it. Less chance of these pulling out. When I go to put the second one on, I want to pre-tension the line, the trellis, thank you. So I use the winch on my utility vehicle, and I use that to apply tension to the backstay post, give it a little tug, walk the line, make sure everything's fine. Remember, now I got one that's set, one that's got it's pre-tensioned using the winch. If I have one wire that's loose and one that's tight, I go to the tensioner, ratchet it so they all match. I don't crank on them. This isn't a fence, this is a trellis. So you don't have to get the springs to slide in, you just want to have tension for the spring, but you leave it wide open, okay? But the winch really, really helps a lot. I don't know a substitute because I don't own one. I suppose if you have a pickup truck or something, you could use a come-along, otherwise it's called a Yankee puller, use a come-along to the towing ball, chinka, 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 that would work too. You know, a piece of chain, old school. So that would work. Now, I did a big dummy here, and I'm hopefully going to be inserting a lot of pictures. The dummy thing I did here was I had a long pin at the middle and a short pin on the top because I had mistakenly anchored to the middle. When I relieved the tension on everything, I was able to lift the wires off the pins, and I swapped the top pin with the bottom pin. So now the long pin's on top and the short pin's on the bottom, with enough to let the wire anchor to the backstay down below, and then the longer pin goes in the top so I can have a wire looped in on both sides. Okay, now the first time I did it, I didn't do that, and everything slipped, and there was already tension on it. What did I do? I drove a staple in it. Okay, I drove a staple in it. That works fine. It's not right, but that works fine. In the end, if you relieve tension on here, just like mooring lines going around a bollard, trust me, you'd have one loop and another loop, and the idea is if they go under properly, you can take this one off, or you can relieve it and you can take this one off. They don't get in each other's way. I don't see as I ever take them off, but the retired Coast Guardsman is trying to do it right. So you're going to have firm wires, not ting, ting, ting. They're going to be firm. Remember now, the wire provides, it keeps the trunk, the leader, vertical. It keeps it squared up. It's not really supposed to support the trunk. It can happen. You might get a snag. I'll show a picture of one in there. And I noticed that the wire wasn't going up in one spot, and it had snagged on a little lateral bud. Okay, so I got it off of that. Now the wire's where it belongs. What I want is I want to provide this lateral support to the trunk, the leader. Now if I have, what do you call them, the laterals coming off, those are going to hang on the wire. Okay, those are going to be supported by the wire. Mostly because the weight they impart isn't nearly as much as if the leader snagged. Now you're trying to pull the tree out by its roots. You don't want to do that. So you use different stuff to fasten those laterals, where you might use a tapener gun, or you may use quick clips, or you may use ag lock. I use ag lock to fasten the leader, the trunk, to secure it to the wire so that it stays put, and then the others come off on the side. I'm also going to be putting conduit, another method. So take a walk, check everything, and make sure that, because as you move these wires around, and if your trees are already fastened, you might have been pulling the trees to the sides. Walk the row, make sure that you haven't rocked the boat as far as the trees are concerned. Make sure you don't have any snags on the leader so that it's not pulling up on the tree. And this should all work. Anyway, I learned an awful lot. One, I bought a second roll of stainless steel wire thinking I was going to need it to make these repairs. I used none of it. Okay, there was plenty left when I cut off the old stuff that I still had my 2 feet above the ground that I was just able to use scraps of high tensile. So, should have done it right the first time. I've never seen anybody tell you how to do this. So maybe I'm the first to share this. These things work really well my heavy clay soil. I don't know. I think if I had a lot of stone, I might get someone to send me one or two of these to try it. Because that tip might be able to, with the right tip, might be able to part the stone, especially if it's flat or whatnot, and get in there, if it's like glacial till or something. And it might be able to part and work its way down. The other thing you might do is if you had like a demolition hammer or another tool, if you applied vibration to this, um, rotary drill running off a generator, that's going to spin inside of here, but that would cause vibration on this and would help it to get through and anchor down. But it works well in my soil. I wouldn't recommend them in sand. Forget about it. So if you have really, really loose soil, soft soil, these are not going to work well for you. You need to find a different kind of anchor. But these work very well in my heavy soils. Probably in any soil where you have a very compacted sublayer, these would work well. Mud, if you stick one into a spring, nothing works. And that was part of my problem is with the heavy wets, a spring came up and loosened one of these, which made for a very messy repair. I hope this helps you. Please give me a thumbs up. I'm going to put the URLs below for Ken Cove in the sources where I bought this stuff. Very fast shipping, nice people. I don't know an alternate source for these. I apologize. I like to tell people where competition is. I don't know. Um, but I imagine if you have a trellis supply near you, you could ask them, and maybe they have alternates. But the nice thing about these is they're really affordable. Even if you lose one in the ground, you haven't lost a lot. Okay. And as far as ease of installation, I'm a one-man team. I'm doing this by myself. So they're it's something you can do by yourself. If you know you're going to sink them all to 2 feet, you want a foot above the ground, you could prefab all of these with a 3-foot, maybe a 4-foot length of stainless on it, and make them all up on a rainy day in a shop, and then take them out and use them to start setting your posts. And that would save you fuss in the field. I'm just saying. Okay, I like Ken Cove. Ken Cove likes me, I guess. They take my money, so I guess that's good. All right, a good day. I really hope the pictures I'm going to try and snap in here work. And I hope I can stop this.